so this is my first tutorial. It's a quick Photoshop tutorial. Very simple. There are many different ways, probably more complex and sophisticated ways to do this, but we're going to do something a little quick and easy today. We are going to turn a crocodile and a frog into a Frogodile. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is launch Photoshop. You might find it down in your taskbar. Just give it a click and up it comes. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to go to File and we're going to Open, at which point you're going to go find your two images. So we've got our croc image and we've got our frog image. To open two things together like this without grabbing everything that you have an option to grab, or without having to do them one at a time, hold down, click your first one, hold down the command key. We're on a Mac, so hold down your command key and click on the other option, in this case the frog. And then click open. And there are our two images. There's our crocodile, whose face we're going to use, and our little frog. Now you can separate these two panels simply by hovering your cursor over the name panel here, hold it down, left click and hold it down, and then just drag. And now you've got two separate images. If for some reason you wanted to put that back, you just do the same thing, hold it over until it goes invisible, let go, and they reconnect. So we're going to separate them. So we're going to call this layer frog. Okay. And we'll call this layer gator. Actually, it's a crocodile, so we'll call him croc. Okay. So the crocodile is the image we want to use, first of all. Okay. You may find down here that there is, I'm not sure why there's not actually, but you may find that there's a little lock. And what you want to do, we're going to be erasing some of this space. So you're going to want to double click the lock. If there's a lock right here, double click it and unlock it. And that way it'll allow us to erase the background and reveal a transparent background. So as you'll see here, if we just erase it, it's a nice soft eraser right now. So that's a transparent background. Okay, so we're going to start with our eraser tool with our crocodile. Okay, so that's this little tool over here, looks like an eraser. Right now, we're going to use, we want a stronger eraser. We don't want that soft eraser, so we're going to click on the eraser and make sure our hardness is 100%. Okay, so that makes a perfect cut as opposed to that soft erase that we saw earlier. And we're simply going to erase all of this background material. We don't need it. We're only concerned with the gator's face. One thing to point out right here, just before, I'm not going to go all the way through this, if you want to change your eraser size, this is true for any of the sizing of any of your tools, all you simply have to do is tap on the square bracket buttons on your keypad. Your left button will make it shrink, your right button will make it go larger. And so you will want to use various sizes as we go through. You want to stay relatively close to the edges of this alligator's face and everything. It's not too important at the moment as we're just quickly trying to isolate this part of the image, but we will want to do that in finer detail momentarily. I'm going to change the size of the eraser tool by tapping that square bracket left to make it smaller. I'm also going to increase the size of our image so I can get into some of those smaller spaces. To do this, hold down Command on your keypad and press the plus button. You'll see the plus and equal sign. Hit that button, and the number of times you hit it will determine how many times it magnifies. To make it small again, do the exact same thing, Command, only now the minus button. So I've got my eraser and I'm going to go in and I want to get into all of these contours. His skin is really scaly and bumpy. We don't want to lose much of that. Take your time, be patient, do it right. Little things like these blades of grass, if they're overlapping your image, we can touch those up a little bit, but in the end you won't really notice that tiny little spot. Doesn't have to be precise. Again, this is not a professional Photoshop, it's just a starting point for us. This is where it'll get a bit trickier, getting in between all these sharp teeth. So we've got a little spot on the bottom here that's a little bit flat, so we're going to have to contour that. So his skin is not perfectly flat, of course, so we don't want that flat spot. So we'll shape it a little bit. We'll just bring that jaw down, like a plastic surgeon, which is fine. Shape it a little. Again, when this is all finished, we're not going to notice little things like that. Try to stay kind of close to his jawline. I'm going to put a shadow under there a little bit later on, so it's not too imperative in this little spot here anyway. Okay, let's bring it down to size and have a look. Doesn't look too bad. Before we move this guy over to our frog, though, we have one problem, as our frog has eyeballs, and we want to keep those froggy eyeballs. But we've got an alligator eyeball right here, so all we're going to do is erase that. Now, you're thinking erase that, and that means we're going to have a big hole there, which is absolutely correct. So we're going to use our clone tool, and that's this little rubber stamp. So click on the rubber stamp, that's a clone tool. And you're going to bring it over. You're going to find a textured spot, somewhere that's really going to blend in. Near the eye probably is a good idea. We'll make this just a little bit bigger to make sure it covers the eye. And we're going to hold down the option button and you'll see this little crosshairs thing pop up. And just a quick left click. Now, what that just did is it picked up that little circle of texture. And we're going to drag that little circle of texture on top of the eye, and then we're going to right click again. Don't touch anything else, just right click. Click. Maybe you have to do it a couple of times. But as you can see now, that texture just kind of blends right in. Now there's a little darker spot, so maybe we want to add a little something extra. Now, it's gone. Maybe it looks like there might be a little spot right there. We'll try it again. Actually makes it look more like an eyeball. Hold on. There. Okay. So, not too bad. We can touch up a little bit of these edges a little bit later on. But it's not too bad at all. One of the other reasons we wanted to unlock this layer is so that we can move this image, now that it's isolated, onto our frog. So all you simply do is take your cursor over here so that your little finger is pointing on the crocodile head. Hold and press left click, and then just drag it. So you got a little fist, it's holding on. A little black box will appear over the object you're going to drop it on. Now just let go, and there is your crocodile head. Now we want to move it around, so you go over here and you click your move tool, and that allows us to move it around. Now obviously this is way too big. We need to resize it, so we're going to open our transform tool. The transform tool, of course, just allows us to transform the size, the shape, the scale of this thing. So hold down Command and click T, and this little box will pop up. Don't grab it by the sides here. This is how you're able to move it on these little boxes. There's one on the top and bottom, one on left and right side, and of course one on each corner. You'll see the double arrow open up. Now, this is important. You have to hold Shift down while you transform the size to keep the scale intact. So if you hold Shift and then drag this down, it'll resize it to whatever you want. Okay, but it keeps the scale in place. If you don't hold shift, this is what will happen. And now you've completely ruined the scale of this face, and we don't want to do that. But we can fix it. So now you're thinking, how are we going to fix this thing and make it back to its original shape and size? We're never going to get it right. Well, yes, we are, because if you hold Command and click Z, it puts it right back to the last point that you had it. Okay. So again, hold down Shift, and we're going to resize it until it's roughly the right size. And now let's kind of position it. So it's looking just maybe a little too big still. We'll try just a little smaller. And we'll place it right about there. And that's about where our crocodile head is going to be. Okay, so we've got it where we want it. We can move it around a little bit if we need to. And so all you have to do is hit Enter or Return, and our little box goes away. Now we can still move it around, but we cannot resize it. I'm going to move this a little bit more, because if you see on our frog has this little line that kind of goes along his jaw. That's like that little fold on your cheek, kind of. And I want to sort of line that up on our alligator with the same kind of sort of line he's got here. So we're going to erase that. We're going to reveal that in the alligator face. So we're going to continue this line forward. So we're going to bring this up, which is fine. Now, of course, our alligator head is overlapping our eyeball here. No problem. We can fix that. I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. So again, Command plus sign, a little bigger. We're going back over to our eraser tool. Click the eraser tool. This time, though, we want a soft brush. Okay, so we're going to start to do a little bit of blending. And if you do a hard blend, it's just going to be a straight line, and it's going to be a very obvious Photoshop. And hopefully this will be relatively seamless. So we've got our blending tool. Now this is a tiny little size 6 eraser, so it'll make a softer edge, but it's still pretty obvious. Command Z to undo what I just did. So we want to make this larger. That's a bit too big. So the other way to do this, of course, is to simply use the left square bracket and resize. Okay. So the bigger the size, the softer the eraser will be. Now, when you're erasing with the soft edge, you don't actually want to erase right on the edge. It'll take all that stuff in the middle and then blend everything on either side. So you want the blend to happen naturally. So you actually erase kind of beside what you're trying to blend. And it'll just slowly take your time, and it'll slowly start to just soften that edge. And it's a nice, softer blend. Okay. Get in here, we want to reveal this eyeball. Again, this is one of those things where you just take your time, let it happen. Okay. Now, I feel like that is a little too much, so I'm going to Command Z, and it's going to take me back to my original, and I'm going to try it again. So I didn't like the way the eyeball was revealed. So actually, I'm going to do that first. It's better. Okay, I took away too much of the eyeball. So now we want to just blend this, because this has to look like it's naturally coming from the frog, that like it's actually attached. Okay. Now we've got the texture here, and it sort of stops here. It's a soft underbelly on the frog and this hard stuff on the alligator, on the crocodile. We can fix that with that same clone tool. So let's do that now. We'll go back to our clone tool, click it, come over to the space we want to clone. Okay, Option, hold it down, you'll see the crosshairs, and left click. Now it just picked up everything within that circle, and you're just going to bring it around, bring it over, do we want with it? You might want to do it again. It seems to pick up. So as you can see here, it's picking up that line beside the alligator's mouth, the crocodile's mouth. So let's just grab another little quick one. Maybe this time we want to grab that line. So we want to extend it just a little bit. Okay. Now, relatively seamless blending. What next? Okay, so same thing up here. We've got this obvious texture here and some fairly smooth texture on the frog's forehead. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. Option, left click, and we're going to bring some of that texture up into this forehead area. Not too bad. Okay, now the next thing is this alligator crocodile head is clearly a different color than our frog's body, so we have to fix that. So we're going to go up to image. We're going to start playing with some colors and some contrast and things like that. So we're going to go up to image, click it open, adjustments, and the first thing we're going down to is color balance. Okay. Or you can just, as a shortcut, you can go Command B and that'll bring that up as well. Now, this is just a matter of playing with these sliders and these color balances until you find your alligator head, the crocodile head rather, the same relative color as the frog's body. So let's just do that a little bit. That doesn't look too bad. We can make a few adjustments. This little spot right here, I don't like the way these warts kind of just stop, so I'm going to clone those. And I'm just going to bring a few of them over. Into that space. Okay. So that looks pretty good. We can darken up some of these things in the alligator's mouth. We're going to go over here to our burn tool. There are several tools in here. You've got a, you've got a dodge tool. The dodge tool will lighten an area. The burn tool will burn an area, and I'm actually not sure what the sponge tool does. I've never used it. So we'll use the burn tool, and again, you want this soft. You might even want that about there. You want it soft, and it's just going to darken any of those already dark spots. So you just drag it over. You just hold down the left mouse button. Drag it down, and anywhere where you want to darken up some of these areas. Define the teeth a little. Maybe you want to darken up the top of the mouth. Maybe in here a little bit. Not bad. Not bad. So it's looking pretty good. I think maybe we can shape the crocodile's jaw a little more. So let's do that. Just I'm going to zoom in a little bit again because there's a little spot over here that I want to fix up right there, that spot right there. So I'm going to make this really small and just kind of get in there. I think it looks pretty good, so I'm going to zoom out again to our normal size. Okay, so there is our guy. Now, we're almost finished. There's a couple of things. One, these edges look really sharp. This is a relatively soft image. These edges look really sharp. I've never seen anybody else do this in any of the tutorials, but I like to do it. I grab this button right here. This is our blur tool. Now, the purpose of this tool is, of course, to soften or blur out your backgrounds. So if we wanted to, we could make this whole thing really blurry. But we don't want to do the whole thing. We just want to soften some of these edges a little bit. So I'm going to zoom in just a bit. And again, don't go all the way in. You really just want to kind of caress the edge just enough to give it a little softness. Not too much. You don't want it to look unnatural. But if it's razor sharp the way it is right now, it also looks unnatural. So just take your time. This is just a quick little touch. Again, once you get further away from your focal point on the camera, you can maybe blur this a little bit more. So things a little further in the background you can see are a little bit more blurry than things closer up. So maybe when you get over here, you can afford to, a little too blurry. And that looks pretty good. Maybe a little here. Now, the last thing we want to do is, there's a little shadow, and our light source is kind of coming from over here. And there's a shadow under our frog, but there's no shadow under our alligator head. And so we want to put a little shadow right there. But we need to put it under this layer. This is a layer panel, by the way. So this is the top layer, this is the bottom layer. So the top layer is our alligator head. The bottom layer is our frog. We need a layer in between. So the way we do that is we make sure that our bottom layer is active. So just click on it, it'll be blue. That's how you know which layer you're using. And you want to go down here to create new layer. A new layer will always be created on top of whatever the active layer is. So you click that, now we've got a blank layer. So anything we do on this layer will show up on top of the frog, but underneath the crocodile. So we want to put a little shadow. So let's go over to our paintbrush. Okay, right there, brush tool, that's what we want. Make sure our color is black, which is what we want. To make sure it's the same color here, you can actually hold down Option, and your little eyedropper pops up, and click it. That does a little color sample, and now we know it's the same color. And then we simply draw our shadow under our alligator. Now, you're going to say, that looks terrible, and you're absolutely right, it does. But we're not done yet. We're going to go to Filter, we're going to go down to Blur, and Gaussian Blur. Click that, and now that blurs it out. So we can go to 0 blur, we can go to 250 times blur, which you don't even see it anymore, or we find somewhere in the middle. It creates a kind of shadow. So that doesn't look too bad, right about 1.5, 1.6 or so. It's a little soft, not too bad. Maybe even 2 or so. Okay, it's a little bit oddly shaped, so we'll go in and get our eraser tool. And we'll just kind of fix it up a little bit. Now, that should have been soft, so let's try that again. Go to our eraser tool. And you can see we're just kind of taking it away. Okay. Zoom out, and there is basically our final product. Now the last thing I like to do is merge all of these layers together so now it's all one image. So make sure your top, or you could do your bottom image, is active. Hover on whatever is on top, so you go to your topmost and bottommost, hold down Shift and click the top, and it grabs everything. Then you want to Command right click and go to Merge Layers. Now you've got all one image. Now be sure you are ready to be finished, because you can't move the head around anymore. You can't, anything you erase, for example, is now going to erase the whole thing. So if I wanted to do an eraser on the head, I'm erasing the entire picture. Command Z to undo. Okay. Now I like to go in and I like to do a little auto color. That just softens it up a little bit, makes it a little more natural. So Command Z, just to see the subtle difference. Command Z, Z. Not too bad. A little subtle difference, but it's there. Go down to adjustments again, and sometimes maybe I'll try a little bit of contrast to see what happens. You don't want to go super high contrast because then it looks weird. I like to soften the contrast a little bit, bring it down, makes it a little softer, a little more natural looking. Click OK. And then I go in and maybe I will do something with the Vibrance, because there's some color in the frog and everything. Maybe we can bring some of the color out a little bit, get some of those reds and yellows and things. You can adjust your saturation all the way down, makes it monochrome, black and white. All the way up makes it super saturated. That's a little too saturated. But we can certainly bring some color out of this. It's completely up to you how much color you want, how much saturation, and so on. Play with it, you know. And that's it. We are finished. When you're all done, go to File. You want to Save As. Let's call this Frogodile 2017 because it's 2017, and why not? You can save it as a Photoshop if you want to further manipulate it later on, although at this point we've merged it so you can't do a whole lot. So let's save it as a JPEG. Click Save. I always save it as the largest, at the maximum. Click OK. And then it shows up on your desktop. I think that's the one, Frogodile 2017. And there he is. Now you can post that on your Instagram and say, look what I saw on my trip to Florida. There are a couple of things I would still do. I'm not altogether happy with this little space here. I think I will try to bring some of this. I'll try to bring some of this texture here over. So let's do that now, actually. So we're not quite finished. I lied to you. I'm sorry. Bring some of that up in there. There. That blends a little bit more. Now we can just save. We've already saved it as. Save as Frogodile 2017. JPEG. Save. We already have that. Do you want to replace it? Yes. Large. Okay. And that's it, boys and girls. We are all finished, and you have created a terrifying Frogodile. I hope you found it riveting.